Hit the bottom, I'm going down with you. Let's take it slow. Who cares where we gotta be? You know you'll have a good time wherever you're with me. Let's take it slow. You don't know how. You say we're taking on water, yeah, we're sinking now. You're looking all concerned, like we're gonna drown. But we both know how to swim, no worries as we'll fall now. Let's take it slow. Where you go, I go too. And if you hit the bottom, I'm going down with you. Let's take it slow.
What's going on, guys? JSGC here, and we are here for another Manchester City live stream. Today, we're going to be doing another episode. It's episode 3 in my weekly series running throughout the summer transfer window of the Transfer Show. Today, main talking points, we're going to be speaking about Josko Gvardiol. We'll break down that deal, what he might bring to Manchester City, when that deal might get agreed, when that deal might get done for Manchester City, and also going to have a look at some potential outgoings for Manchester City and the general direction that I feel like the transfer window for City is heading in. But before we are heading into the video, don't forget, like always, if you are enjoying the content, then do leave a thumbs up. That would be much appreciated. Also, don't forget to let me know your thoughts in the live chat. Whilst we've got the live chat there, I can see we've got Kevin in on the chat. Much appreciated. KQ, thanks for tuning in. Much appreciated. Rala, thanks for tuning in. I'm very well, thank you. How are you? And I'm DJ. Thanks for tuning in as well. So thank you to everybody for tuning in at the moment. It is much appreciated. Do get your questions in for me. I'll try my best to answer them for you guys. Also, don't forget as well, we're running daily Manchester City transfer updates. So if you want to subscribe to me and stay up to date on YouTube first and fast with all the latest Manchester City transfer news every single day throughout the summer transfer window, make sure you have subscribed on social media links. You can find them in the description. Spencer, thanks for tuning in. Stockport, thanks for tuning in. Lord, thanks for tuning in as well. Stockport, actually quite like that. I think that's a good starting point for today's video. Romeo Lavia, thoughts on that? Well, he's getting linked with Liverpool, Chelsea. I know Man United name's being chucked out there. Just about every single team that's part of the big six really are getting linked with Romeo Lavia. Apart from Manchester City, the team that do actually have a buyback clause in the contract to make him a Manchester City player once more. Now, Manchester City, I think that and ahhing about making a move for a central midfielder. And Romeo Lavia has had a brilliant season since signing for Southampton last season. He's got a season of Premier League experience under his belt. He's a good player and he's ready to push on and basically solidify himself as a solid Premier League player. Is he going to get the game time? Is he what Man City are looking for? Has to be the questions that get asked. And quite frankly, for the position that he plays, we are kind of stacked when it comes to defensive midfielders. We have got players like John Stones, Rodri, Mateo Kovacic, who can all cover in defensive midfield. Man City are covered when it comes to defensive midfielders. And if we're wanting to go with our 4 centre-backs and invert one of them into a defensive midfielder, when it comes to actual playing time for Romeo Lavia, I just have my doubts about that. The question, I think, has to be said for Lavia. I think the big question with regards to that is, can he adapt himself to play further afield? Can he play behind the striker? Can he find them passes? Can he pivot? Can he box to box? Is he the complete package? And right now, he isn't. Is he worth taking the risk? I would say that if we didn't bring any more central midfielders in and we left this much later into the window and we needed a good, solid Premier League option, I would say 100% Romeo Lavia, go for it. I think it'd be a good signing. I just don't think right now that Romeo Lavia is what Manchester City are looking for. And considering we've got a buyback on him for around £40 million, is it worth the risk? Is it what we're looking for? I'm not sure. That's my thoughts on Romeo Lavia. So do let me know your thoughts as well. Stockport also asked thoughts on Callum Doyle. Thought he'd be the future for Manchester City. Well, Callum Doyle, he's a brilliant player. Spent last season out on loan at Coventry, had a really good season, and what he'll be looking for will be to push on now. He's had a good season in the Championship. He'll want to be, if he's leaving Manchester City, either signing for a top Championship team that's got aspirations of making it into the Premier League, potentially even a Premier League player himself. What he needs is game time. What he needs is to continue his development. As I said, brilliant at Coventry last season. He now needs to push that on to the next level. And I think the same can be said for James Trafford as well. Brilliant season last season in League One with Bolton. You want him to really push on now for the sake of his development. You'd be looking at the Championship, lower parts of the Premier League. It's why Burnley are interested. Burnley want to spend that money. He's had a brilliant time at the European Under-21 Championships as well. There are lots of money to be made here for young players leaving Manchester City. Callum Doyle, James Trafford are two of a lot of names being linked out there with the exit door. Shea Charles is another player that's been linked with the exit door as well. And Manchester City seemingly going to be getting just under £11 million for Shea Charles. These are players that have been in and around the fringes of the first team squad. They've had some minutes here and there. I mean, Callum Doyle and James Trafford have never played for Manchester City. At Man City, when you accumulate all these player sales in, we'll be looking well north of £30 million. It means Mateo Kovacic, that deal, it's paid for itself in terms of our net spend. So we don't really have to worry about that. And that's all to do with the CFA. It's all to do with the academy. These youngsters are on a conveyor belt because we were saying to ourselves a couple of seasons ago when we were losing the likes of Romeo Lavia, who we got ready to come in and replace these top quality young players. Yet the next batch comes in and Man City will ship them on and they'll make profit. One or two will start filtering into the first team squad. And then, we'll be in the same situation again next season. There'll be some young players heading out on loan who are going to impress and Man City will be able to make that money. And the good thing about these young players is that they are just that, the young players, 16, 17, 18 years old. They've got the whole career ahead of them. And for the potential that they've got and what Manchester City are looking for, I do think that this is a brilliant way for the club to make money. And I will tell you right now, there are clubs out there who look at Manchester City, look at the model of the City Football Group, and they want to replicate it by creating their own dynasty, their own group with their own clubs involved. Clubs are having a look at that. United have had a look at that and trying to replicate what Manchester City can and have achieved with the City Football Group. And they'll look at the exact same with the academy, invest in the academy, get top quality facilities, bring in the best players from around the country, from around the world, develop them. And all of a sudden, you're looking at a way here to be able to make so much money when it comes to Manchester City's net spend. It will get to a point. I mean, Man City could go out there and we could ship on more of our top quality young players that we've got if we wanted to, the likes of Cole Palmer. We could choose to sell him on. And if Man City were to do that with 4 or 5 of our top quality academy players, Josko Gvardiol could pay for himself. That's how valuable and how good these young players are and will be. I think Man City, though, they're just happy 2 or 3 leave every season. Obviously, next season, you'll start to see the 16, 17-year-olds who will come in. They will start to be developed around the academy. They'll be loaned out. They'll do a season or 2 out on loan, and all of a sudden then getting sold for profit. Tommy Doyle could be another. Sheffield United getting heavily linked with him. James McAteer is another. There's so many top quality young players when it comes to developing these young players at Manchester City and making them into really good players set for the future. Because at the end of the day, you've got to do that. When you're looking at young players, you have got to make sure that their development is what is needed for them. They need to be looked after. They need to be put into almost like they need to be put into not so much of a bubble, but they need to just be developed in a way and looked after that they're set up for the rest of their careers, because you are most vulnerable when you are not a professional football player, when you've not signed that professional football contract. you are extremely vulnerable to injuries. You're going to be, all of a sudden, just one bad thing can happen. All of a sudden, your promising career is done and dusted. So Manchester City need to just make sure, and they're doing a really good job of this, making sure that these young players are being developed. Because I said it's great producing these young players. Some make it in the first team, like Phil Foden. Some go out there. Some end up being sold on for profit, the likes of Romeo Lavia, who's got a very promising career. He could well be playing Champions League football for a Premier League team next season. Probably not going to be Manchester City, but could well be with somebody else. And then there's other cases where you come to Manchester City, you get released, it doesn't quite work out, and you end up the likes of Luke Bolton, etc., where you end up knocking around the EFL, but you're able still to make a professional career, and you're able to set yourself and your families up. And at the end of the day, that's what football is. It is a job to the players, and they want to go to the very best clubs where they can win the top prizes. And when you're a young player, you want to be going to the best academies so you can develop and put yourself into a position where you can be the best that you can be. And Manchester City, to me, head and shoulders above the rest when it comes to the academy. The trophies in the academy, they speak for themselves. Manchester City are not just a well-run club, but when it comes to our under-18s, very well-run. When it comes to our elite development squad as well, so well-run for Manchester City. So very happy with the direction that that's heading in. Man City are making money, and it does allow us there to go out there with our net spend and make signings. We don't even need the net spend. With the amount of money that Man City earn through the sponsorships and the prize money that we've got from winning the treble, we don't need the net spend. But that's the direction that the club wants to go in. They see it as best for business, and that is the direction that we are going in. Makes a good point there, Espongile. I hope I've said your name correctly there. I do apologise if I haven't, but makes a really good point there. So he wants James McAteer back, and it's all quiet on the James McAteer front. Not hearing anything. I'm not hearing a word. One thing I do find very interesting, I know Sheffield United want James McAteer back, but they're currently showing more interest in Tommy Doyle because I think that's more realistic. They're only allowed one player on loan from Manchester City because they're now a Premier League team and City are a Premier League team, so they can't have both McAteer and Tommy Doyle. And I think they see it as more realistic that they're going to get Tommy Doyle ahead of James McAteer. McAteer could be loaned. I know Brighton's name's been chucked out there. I think Brentford's name's been chucked out there. Two good clubs who are brilliant at developing and making better top quality young players. However, I would give him pre-season. I would see what he can do in pre-season and move his development on from there. If he impresses, Man City may not need to go out there and sign a central midfielder. James McAteer is a player that can go box to box. He is a player that knows how to pass. He is a player that can play behind the striker. We have a ready-made player right there in James McAteer. So we will see. Vinay, thanks very much for tuning in, says the way Vega plays, very similar to McAteer. All quiet again on the Gabriel Vega front from Celta Vigo. PSG's name was getting chucked out there. And when I was doing the Avenger stream with City Extra, they were speaking about PSG and everyone seems set that he's signing for PSG. And I was just thinking to myself, well, back in May, he was set to sign for Real Madrid. That didn't happen. That didn't materialise. He was getting linked with a whole host of Premier League clubs. Newcastle were believed to be closing in with him at the beginning of June. That didn't happen. Fast forward to July. PSG are closing in, yet still no agreements have been found. He's got a release clause, 40 million euros. No club seems like they want to pay it. No club seems like they want to right now go out there and sign to sign Gabriel Vega, and it just doesn't make any sense. I think he's a good player, very good player. He's had a good season in La Liga. Pep Guardiola is renowned for making players even better than what they already are, and I think he'd be brilliant for the development of Gabriel Vega, but I'm not too sure if Manchester City will go out there and sign him. I think it'd be a good signing if we did, but I'm not too sure if it'll happen. Blue Moon, thanks very much for tuning in to JSGC. Just wanted to say, love your content. Don't comment much on the video, but been following you for a while. Blue Moon, thank you very much for that. It's comments like that that motivate me to be able to do the videos for you guys. I want to go out there and I want to be able to provide top quality content, entertaining content, but also informative. And also I like things to be factual. And as I say, every transfer window that comes around, I see it as my job to be able to digest and tell you guys facts from fiction. And I think, to me anyway, I thought I did a really good job when it came to speaking about Declan Rice and keeping you guys all up to date, because I've been there, done that, worn the T-shirt. I've dealt with lots of sources and I know what points they're trying to get across when it comes to players signing for Manchester City, and when it comes to big, high-profile signings, it's a little bit more straightforward, in my opinion, to digest what's fact and what's fiction. But if you've not dealt with it before, you'll see what people are saying. If you've not dealt with transfers and how Man City deal with things, you would look at Declan Rice and you would think what the Arsenal fans are trying to make out. You'd think what they're saying is fact, which is Declan Rice had an offer from Manchester City. We could have matched what Arsenal could have offered. We chose not to because we think he chose Arsenal over us. That's the Arsenal fans' way of thinking. I've been dealing with Manchester City sources for a long time. You dig a little bit deeper. Man City have made a bid. Man City were ringing up West Ham and say, keep us up to date because we're interested. If Gundogan leaves, we'll see where we go. They'll have a look at the numbers and they'll have gone, are we going to match what Arsenal are doing? No. And West Ham's utilised that situation. And Arsenal, to me, have been made mugs of. They've got a brilliant signing in Declan Rice. I think he's a good player, but I think they've overpaid. Arsenal were willing to pay £80 million. They've ended up paying £105 million. They're paying an extra £25 million because of Man City's name. And that's all down to West Ham using Man City's name. No bid came in from Manchester City. Man City don't make bids. Man City get verbal agreements in place. Then we make bids when we know they're going to be accepted. That's how Man City under Chicky do their business. We don't put bids in through potluck, hoping for the best. And as I said, I could see right through that one as I've dealt with it, been there, done that, worn the T-shirt. And to me, that's where my experience in doing this is able to come through. And as I said, that was all about making sure you guys were getting factual information when actually alternative fans out there were trying to make out things were happening when things were not. And to me, as I said, you start to dig around, you start to find out what sounds like Man City, what doesn't, what's reliable, and what isn't as well. And as I said, that's to me anyway. I see that as part of my job when it comes to keeping you guys up to date. So, is there any other players you guys want me to speak about and see if we've got any of the latest developments out there? It seems to be a little bit quiet, so I think this is a good point for me during this live stream for me to be able to speak about Josko Gvardiol. And also speak about what I think he may bring to Manchester City. So in my latest transfer update and what I reported on in my transfer update this morning is the very latest on that. Man City are working on an £86 million deal to sign Josko Gvardiol from RB Leipzig. There's complications in the deal when it comes to the fee because it's so expensive and when it comes to the structure of the payments to make that transfer happen. Doesn't mean the deal's going to collapse. I think people interpret things differently and they think that, oh no, right, let's panic. I don't think Man City are going to sign Josko Gvardiol because things are taking their time. But transfers do take their time, and when they're as expensive and as big as a transfer of Josko Gvardiol, it's going to take weeks to negotiate, to get things sorted, to find them agreements. It happened with Jack Grealish. That weren't a straightforward transfer. That went on for a good 2 or 3 weeks, and it's the same here with Josko Gvardiol. And I think Manchester City will continue continuing to persevere, and eventually they will find that agreement and that transfer will happen. I don't think there's any problem when it comes to the £86 million fee. I think it's just about how you want to pay that money across to RB Leipzig, because they tend to be done in installments. They can be done such as Ferran Torres, which was £50 million fee. I think it was split over 5 years, £10 million each year. Arsenal were trying their best with Declan Rice to get that £105 million put across 4 years. In the end, it's ended up being put across, I think, is 18 months to 24 months instead. And that's what City and Leipzig will be trying to negotiate now to try and make that one happen. So, yeah. Make a really good point there. Hot Hits. Love that name, by the way. Ornstein, PR for Arsenal. I don't think he's PR for Arsenal. He's worked before at the Athletic and he's worked close to Arsenal before. I think David Ornstein's just got himself a reputation, a little bit like Fabrizio Romano, where they get fed information from agents, they get fed information from clubs. So West Ham and Declan Rice's agent and his entourage will have been working on that deal to feed him information, to put it out there because they know Arsenal and Manchester City, through these reliable sources, will be listening. Almost like a third party. Man City don't really do agent bickering. They tend to find verbal agreements, ring up the clubs and find out what's what through the players' agents privately rather than publicly. And this Declan Rice deal was very public. And that was a tactic being used, as I said, by Declan Rice's camp and West Ham's camp to make sure that they got their value met for Declan Rice, and they managed that. To me, my opinion, I think Arsenal have been taken for a ride by West Ham, but to sign top quality players, you've got to pay top money to make that happen. City had it with Jack Grealish. We could have negotiated like we tried with Harry Kane. Wasn't getting anywhere. It didn't work. And could have happened with Jack Grealish, and no agreement would get found. A club has their value; they don't need to sell. And to make the transfer happen, you're going to have to, at the very least, meet them halfway. More than likely, you're going to have to pay a lot of what they are looking for. And you have your own values when it comes to these players. Man City had their value, £90 million, what they were willing to pay for Declan Rice. That was their value. Arsenal, obviously, paying £105 million. We're happy to pay that. So, it is what it is. It is what it is. Tom, thanks for tuning in. Says, any news on Thiago Almeda? Not heard anything about Thiago Almeda since I was reporting on his links the other day. Obviously, he's a player that is in demand across Europe. He's having a very good campaign out in the United States of America, playing for Atlanta United. Obviously, an Argentina international as well. We'll see what developments are on that. But at the moment, I think Manchester City have just put some feelers out there. Asking the question, we're interested. As I say, we always deal with transfers. There are always hurdles. Interest comes first. Following on from interest, then moves into concrete interest from Manchester City, and they'll then start to speak with the entourage of the player to see what it's like in terms of the personal terms before you even get into the fee. Because a lot of the times, and I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this or not, but when it comes to negotiations and it comes to making transfers happen, agents are very important, which is why they get paid a lot of money to make transfers happen. It's agents who make transfers happen. It's agents who speak as the middleman to two clubs. Bernardo Silva is a great example. Man City are always speaking with Bernardo Silva's agent. It's Bernardo Silva's agent. If Bernardo Silva wants to leave, it's his agent's job to make sure that he makes that transfer away from Manchester City happen. So the agent has to speak with other clubs. They have to find out the interest out there. They have to find out what clubs are willing to pay, what Man City are looking for. Can transfers happen? There's a lot of work that goes into deals. As we get towards transfer deadline day, things start to accelerate. They go a little bit quicker. I think clubs get a little bit desperate, and that's where clubs start to panic buy and they start chucking money around. That's kind of how transfers happen and how you manage to negotiate them down, which is all good fun. I'm hoping one day, certainly on YouTube anyway, keep my fingers crossed, one day there'll be an agent out there who will really break down a transfer right from the start right through to the completion of how a transfer would work. I think that'd be a really interesting thing to watch and watch how things develop, because obviously all these all or nothing documentaries you get on Amazon Prime, and they go into the background of the clubs. They never really dig into the transfers and dig into the agents and what happens with regards to that. So I think that's very interesting. That's certainly something I think I would like to see one day. Blue Moon House, not really transfer related. Do I think Phil Foden will play in the middle next season? I think you're looking at Kevin De Bruyne's ready-made like-for-like replacement to play behind the striker. I actually think if there is a way to get Julian Alvarez more minutes at Manchester City as well, I think that is the way for Manchester City to go. When we're going up against teams that are going to put that low block in place, go with the second striker rather than the extra midfielder, and try and get these extra attackers to be able to adapt so they can play central midfield, attacking midfield, and striker all at the same time. That's what Pep Guardiola looked for. And I think Julian Alvarez would be very good at that. I think Phil Foden would be very good at that. And I think that might be a way for Man City to go when it comes to potentially replacing Kevin De Bruyne, because is he 32, 33 years old now? He just had his birthday. I'm not sure if he's just turned 32 or 33. So we don't have, it makes it quite sad to say this, but I don't think we've got too long left of Kevin De Bruyne. Obviously already picked up his hamstring injury. I'm hoping that's not going to be a reoccurrence injury. I'm hoping that he'll be able to get fully fit. And Man City's physios have been outstanding over the last couple of seasons, keeping players fit, that we'll be able to get a good, at least 4 more seasons out of Kevin De Bruyne. But at some point, that question does have to be asked. And you have to find player replacements, and when it comes to replacing Kevin De Bruyne, you don't simply replace someone of Kevin De Bruyne, certainly not with like to like. You want to be replacing them with versatile players that can do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I think that's where Phil Foden comes in for Manchester City. Brian asks, who do you reckon will be who's everyone's replacement, for Bernardo Silva if he does leave? I think I would put a deadline, a time on Bernardo Silva if he's to leave Manchester City. A timeline has to be put on that to be met by a certain date, because it's so complicated to replace him. It's very expensive to replace him. I wouldn't rule out if Bernardo Silva leaves. Sounds crazy this, but Manchester City not replacing him. I would not rule that out. I really wouldn't. I wouldn't rule out Manchester City not replacing Bernardo Silva, taking their time and taking another 12 months to assess who's out there and who they'd want to bring in to potentially replace Bernardo Silva. The problem I think you've got is our squad's really stretched thin. We've got lots of quality. We're continuing with that philosophy of a solid 14, 15 players, and the rest made up of I don't like using this term, but made up of bit part players. And I thought that Manchester City really would have been focusing on these bit part players to try and sort their futures out. The likes of Cole Palmer, the likes of Sergio Gomez, the likes of Emerick Laporte. And Man City don't seem to be in any rush when it comes to these players. So maybe they're just happy they've won the treble, keep the status quo. If we can't find clubs for these players, we can't find clubs for these players. Worst case scenario, you're training around the first team squad, and if you're needed, you'll be called upon. But I don't know. Again, same with João Cancello. There's nothing. There's no interest out there. We faced a prospect in a week to 2 weeks' time. João Cancello will return to Manchester City. Is he going to train with the reserves? Is he going to be left at home? What's going to happen? Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Kevin, you make a really good point there. Haaland's so important last season. So important to Manchester City's system as well. He is an elite striker. And to me, when you've got an elite striker, a world-class player like Erling Haaland, who's currently getting linked, he's the second favourite for the Ballon d'Or. He's going to be very unlucky to miss out on that. I think he is. I think Messi will end up winning it. But I think he's going to be very unlucky to miss out. And with that being the case, I think Manchester City will just want to persevere when it comes to Erling Haaland. I think they'll want to try and get the very best out of him. And you get the very best out of players like Erling Haaland by feeding him the ball as often as possible, putting him in them positions, and hopefully he'll be able to kind of forget about. I mean, his form wasn't bad at the end of the season. It just wasn't hitting the heights it was hitting at the beginning of the season. But I think that just comes down to the systematic play of Manchester City. There were players firing left, right, and centre who were finding space, and ultimately it's a team game. As long as Manchester City were winning them important games, which we were, it doesn't matter who is scoring the goals. And Manchester City, through Erling Haaland, we were never reliant upon his goals. It was just always a big benefit. And certainly towards the first half of the season, he was finding hat-tricks on a regular basis. And I think Man City will want to get back into the swing of things. And I think what will be really interesting, actually, because a lot of the Premier League teams are thinking about changing their formation. I've seen a lot of people wanting them to copy Manchester City's tactic and going with the 4 centre-backs. It'll be very interesting if their teams do start to adapt to them formations. Whilst they adapt to trying to play a different system, then it could be very interesting that Manchester City choose to accelerate upon that and Erling Haaland finding a little bit more space. I would not rule out Erling Haaland getting off to a very quick start again for Manchester City, in my complete, honest opinion. Kevin says, give Cancello a chance. Cancello's a wonderful player. The biggest problem I think you've got with Cancello, I know there's big questions over his attitude. I think the biggest problem you've got with Cancello is with the system that we play. João Cancello isn't a good central midfielder. João Cancello isn't a good centre-back. He can't play in them positions. He is a brilliant fullback. He's a brilliant player at working the ball into space. He's a good player in space, and he's a very good player when it comes to putting balls into the box. But at the end of the day, can João Cancello do what Nathan Ake can for Manchester City? And the answer is no. Can he do what Kyle Walker can do and play at centre-back? And the answer is, again, no. So if Man City go to a flat back four and we need a right back or a left back, João Cancello is a wonderful option. There isn't, in my opinion, in the Premier League, a better option than João Cancello. But we don't play with that system. And it doesn't look like anytime soon we're going to have that system. And because of that, Cancello at Manchester City won't work. And I don't think he'll work at many Premier League clubs if they're going to want to adapt how Man City play under Pep Guardiola. I think he'd be best seeking a move abroad. But we're going to go back to the agents. City will have their asking price. It's up to his agent to find a transfer away, because I don't think Man City will want Cancello returning back to the first team squad and upsetting any players, because they were the rumours. They were the rumours that were going out there. He was upsetting the apple cart. He was upsetting the players. He was being adamant to Pep Guardiola. He was answering him back. Pep Guardiola, we know this. He doesn't like it. Pep Guardiola is a manager who demands respect. And quite frankly, Pep Guardiola deserves respect. He's just won the treble for Manchester City whilst not having João Cancello in the squad. So it's very difficult to argue against that, in my complete honest opinion. But Kevin, as I said, each to their own. Cancelo's a wonderful player. I just don't think he suits Man City's system anymore. Which, I mean, if he's happy to come in at City, fight for his place, not moan, get down, knuckle down, work hard, adapt himself, and see if he can make a position for himself in the squad, I'm happy for him to be here. Yan Couto's a perfect example. He's a fullback, he's a wing back. He's at the CFA right now. He's at the academy. He's training. He's back before everybody else, working hard. He wants to return for pre-season for Manchester City. He wants to impress. Cancello can have that attitude as well. He's got the talent. Can he work hard? They're the questions. They are the big questions. Elsewhere out there, I don't think there's much else out there in terms of transfers. Umar just asked, how can I say that he doesn't suit our system anymore? Well, he's a fullback. We don't play with fullbacks. How does he fit? Explain to me. Explain to me how João Cancello, with Man City's formation that we've been playing since February, how João Cancello fits into that system. Man City experimented with this system. They were trying to make it work throughout November, December, and January, and couldn't hit the form. As soon as Cancello was away and we found a settled back four, it worked for Manchester City. And there isn't a coincidence to me. It isn't a coincidence. City have a system that works. They've got players that work. They've got players that they want to bring in to suit this system. And Cancello isn't a player that's in them systems that will work. I mean, FIFA says, play Cancello right wing. We tried playing Cancello right wing. I can't remember who it was against. There was a game. There was 2 games. I think there might have been 2 games where we tried playing him in a more advanced role and he wouldn't track back. So, again, as I said, if Cancelo's going to adapt himself and he's going to work hard, that's great. Fine. I'm happy to have him back. I am more than happy to have him back. The bigger problem that you have is it didn't work first time, so I don't see how it would work second time. And I'm fearful here that you guys are interpreting it as I don't like João Cancello or I don't rate João Cancello. I think he's a brilliant player. I just think in the system it doesn't work for him, and I think he'd be better. Like Aymeric Laporte, there's so much competition for his place that the City have got the settled options there. He's going to struggle to get into the team. He's a brilliant player. There is no other player I want playing as a rotated player than Aymeric Laporte, because he's a fantastic player. But he deserves to be starting because he's too good not to be starting. And he deserves to be at a club where he's starting and playing regularly. And I think the same can be said for Cancello. He's a top-class player. And he's too good not to be starting for teams. But it didn't work for him at Bayern Munich out on loan. It didn't work in the second half of the season back in January for João Cancello as well. So there's money to be made on these players. To me, I would let these players, as I said, speak to the agents, find clubs for these players, accumulate that money, and then assess the squad situation. And I think that is the direction that we heading in the summer transfer window. I think if the likes of Laporte and Cancello don't leave, there'll be no more business done by Man player sales, and that does happen. I mean, we still don't know what's happening with Kyle Walker. If that is the case, then Manchester City may need to dip into the market, and all of a sudden you could let a Walker or a Sergio Gomez leave, and all of a sudden Man City look a little bit short on their options, and they may go out there back into the market. I mean, just have a look at centre-backs last season. We looked just a little bit short, but not too short. We could have coped, but we decided we'll act, and we brought in Manuel Akanji. No fuss. It was a very simple, very straightforward transfer, and I won't rule out Man City maybe towards the latter parts of the window through end of July into August, maybe having a look and seeing what's out there, and if there's any good bargains to be had that could help improve the squad depth of Manchester City, they could go down that route. But any player that we brought in by Manchester City, have to be versatile. That is the most important thing when you are a Pep Guardiola player. You don't really play for a position. You play for your place to start wherever Pep Guardiola tells you to start. And with the comments that's just come out about Gabriel Jesus, he was very upset that other players were starting ahead of him, and he got upset, and that's when he decided he wanted to leave Manchester City. And we've seen it now with other players who get a little bit upset when they're not starting games, and they can't understand that players who don't play in their position are starting what looks like in their position ahead of them, and it's not. It's just Pep Guardiola wants them to do a little bit of a different job. Pep Guardiola is a genius. No one here is going to question that. And if Pep Guardiola wants to bring any players in for the Manchester City squad, then I back that 100%. And if Pep Guardiola thinks a player, it's the right time for them to leave, and again, I back them 100%. Man City we have no reason to doubt Man City in the transfer market, because Manchester City have been for the last 3-4 seasons, every decision that they have made, they have got correct. They've pulled out of deals, they've gone out there and signed other players, they've been patient, it's not been costly towards Manchester City, and right now things are very good, and Manchester City are putting themselves into a position here where we can go out there and we can really build ourselves a dynasty. We have just won the treble. We are strengthening our team, and the teams around Manchester City will be very fearful about what City are doing, and the fact that the net spend at City is so good as well. I think this is a very good time to be a Manchester City player and also a Manchester City fan as well. So there we go, guys. That has been today's live stream transfer show with your host, JSGC. We'll be back again next week for episode number 4. We'll see what the talking points are. These are always ever-changing when it comes to the transfer market. So if you want to stay up to date every single day with the latest Manchester City transfer news on YouTube, make sure you have subscribed to my channel. Social media links there in the description if you want to go and check me out and follow me on my Twitter and Instagram. TikTok in the description too, my link to that if you want to go and follow me on there. That'd be much appreciated. Email also in the description. If you want to hit me up for any sponsorships for any videos or any general business inquiries, do leave a thumbs up if you are enjoying the content. Also, don't forget as well to subscribe if you are new around here. And I will see you guys all again very soon for the next Manchester City transfer video. We'll be back again tomorrow religiously with another daily Manchester City transfer update. Spencer, thanks very much for that. Strike a like. That would be much appreciated. Thank you very much, Ryan. Much appreciated. Ryan as well. Thank you very much for that. Blue Moon, much appreciated. Thank you very much for everybody for tuning in. Keku as well. Blue Moon, thanks very much for your kind comment. I'll see you all again real soon. So I've been JSGC. Thank you everyone for watching. Peace. Ciao for now.